Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Vishnu Prabhupada. All glories to assembled Vaishnavi devotees. And all glories to our revered speaker for today, His Grace SALIKA Prabhu, who needs no introduction. It's one of our hosts on this very platform. And Prabhuji, we thank you for being here, sharing Srimad Bhagavatam with us all. So, Hare Krishna. Without further ado, we may put the verse on the screen and take it over. Hare Krishna. All right.
Narayana namaskritam naraichaivam naruttamam Devi Saraswati Vyasam Tatu Jayam Udiraye Nasta Apraishu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhagavati Naishiki Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable fact. We welcome all of the devotees to today's Srimad Bhagavatam. Today is the 14th day of the month of November, the year 2025. I hope everyone can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Thank you. So today we're discussing from the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we're discussing chapter 14, text number 19. So I'll read the Sanskrit and the transliteration, and then we can go into the discussions. Yam ahu atmano I aham sreyas kamasya manini yasyam swaduram adyasya pumam charati vidvara. Yam aho atmano I adham sreyas karmanasya manini yasyam swaduram adyasya pumam charati vidvara. Word for word translation. Yam, the wife who, aho is said, atmana of the body, I does, ad aham of, Shreya welfare, karmasya of all desires, manini, O respectful one, yas yaham, in whom swa duraham, all responsibility, adyasya, entrusting, pumam, iman, charity, mus, varaha, without anxiety. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Labai Charanaravinda, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety and taking all responsibilities to his wife. Purport by His Divine Grace. Sila Abhay Charanaravinda, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. By the Vedic injunction, the wife is accepted as the better half of a man's body because she is supposed to be responsible for discharging half of the duties of the husband. A family man has a responsibility to perform 5 kinds of sacrifices called Panchayagya in order to get relief from all kinds of unavoidable sinful reaction incurred in the course of his affairs. When a man becomes qualitatively like the cats and dogs, he forgets his duties in cultivating spiritual values, and thus he accepts his wife as a sense. Can you move forward? He accepts his wife as a sense gratificatory agency. When the wife is accepted as a sense gratificatory agency, personal beauty is the main consideration. And as soon as there is a break in personal sense gratification, there is destruction or divorce. But when husband and wife aim at spiritual advancement by mutual cooperation, there is no consideration of personal beauty or the destruction of the so-called love. In the material world, there is no question of love. Marriage is actually a duty performed in manual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. Therefore, marriage is essential in order to avoid the life of cats and dogs who are not meant for spiritual enlightenment.
Hare Krishna, Salika Prabhu, before you end on the purport, I think you misread here, I guess because of the screen. Marriage is actually, which is very important, marriage is actually a duty performed in the mutual. You misread, you said manual.
Okay. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. Therefore, marriage is essential in order to avoid the life of cats and dogs who are not meant for spiritual enlightenment. Omagyanam Tmirandasya Gane Gyanam Salakaya Shakshu Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swam Padanti Kam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Pada Kamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganara Gunatam Vitam Tam Saajivam Sadvaitam Savadvitam Parijanam Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahaganam Lalita Sri Vishakavitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gospisha Gopika Kakantara Da Kantana Mostute Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Shute Devi Pranamami Nari Priye Vancha Karpa Taru Vyascha Kripa Sundubhyas Ivascha Patitanam Pavashnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Mukhaṁ Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagayate Girim Yat-kripatam Bande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Chiadvita Gadada Shingvashadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yam Ao Atmano Iad Aham Shreyas Tamasya Manini Yasyam Swadhuram Adyasya Pumam Charati Vidvara. O respectful one, a wife is so beautiful that she is called the better. No, I repeat that again. A wife is so earthful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of our sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety and trusting all responsibilities to his wife. Hare Krishna. So, we welcome all of the devotees to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class, which is the most auspicious moment of the day, because we have the opportunity to directly, for the next couple of minutes, hour, to directly associate with the Lord. The Lord, his name, his personality, his characters, everything that is related to the Lord is as good as the Supreme Personality of God. So talking about Krishna in his Krishna Katha, rendered in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is a direct association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But what makes the difference is the consciousness. Because for someone else, this is another exercise. This is another ritual. This is another engagement. This is another regulations. But for those who are pure devotees of the Lord, every moment of association with the Lord in the form of his katha is as good as directly standing face to face, shaking hand, like one of my good brothers would say, with the Supreme Personality of God. So it is the most auspicious moment in life. And those who are great devotees, they beg the Lord, whatever the time that it is due for me to quit this world, let me be in this consciousness of hearing and talking about you. So Grandfather Bhishma Dev was such a powerful personality of this nature. The yogis who are expert in studying the Vedic scriptures, in trying to capture the essence of the Vedic scriptures, they calculate infinitely good and auspicious times to quit the body. Because for one who is born, death is good as certain. And then that moment of death is said to be the final moment. It's actually the purpose of life. Death is the purpose of birth. Because the moment the birth is said, then it means there is something called death. And that death, or the quitting of the body for the soul, is the purpose for his taking the body. So those who are wise, they do not engage like the Gyani or the Kamakandis. They engage in the process of bhakti, because bhakti directly connects you with the essence of human existence. And that leads us to the discussions we're discussing today, the topic we're discussing today. Purpose behind the concept of marriage is being delineated in the verse we're saying. There's a beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, verse number 7, Lord Krishna told Arjuna Mata parantara nanya kinsit asti dananjaya. Mai sarvam idam protam sutrimani gana hiva. Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, O conqueror of world, there is no truth that is superior to me. And the point we're using in this context is where Krishna concludes that text. He says, everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. And this is the essence of all revealed scriptures, that ultimately everything that is in existence is meant to ultimately culminate in connecting to Krishna. We see beautiful necklace, but that beautiful necklace is beautiful because there is a thread in between it that strung it together. And Krishna is saying in that verse that everything is resting upon him. And when something does not rest upon him, just like no matter how beautiful a ruby, diamond, pearls are, when they are not strung together, their beauty does not manifest in a jewel. Gold is beautiful in its way, but when it is decorated in a pearl, in a necklace, it becomes more enhanced in its beauty. So in the same way, everything in existence is beautiful when they are strung on Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the verse that we're studying today, or we're discussing in the conversation, between Maitreya Muni, describing the pregnancy of Diti in the evening. Of course, we know that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are so many voices. Sukadev Goswami spoke, and Sutta Goswami narrated. And here, Vidura is having a conversation with Maitreya Muni. And in this particular verse, is talking about the primary duty of a wife. In the material world, the concepts of wife and husband are so weird when we look at it from the material context. And that is what Prabhupada is speaking to in this verse. And Prabhupada is distinguishing that from the Vedic concept of what a wife means. Maitreya Muni is telling Vidura here that a wife is a better half. In the Bible, in the West Abrahamic scriptures, there is the concept of the wife being the ribs of the husband. But Prabhupada is giving a concept here. It's according to the Vedic injunction. And this concept is generally, globally accepted, that a wife is a better half. But what is the better half purpose? That is what is delineated in the verse that we're discussing. And why a wife is accepted as a better half is discussed by Srila Prabhupada in this conversation between Maitreya Muni and Vidura. And Prabhupada explaining that the primary purpose is that a wife is supposed to be responsible to be a partner, because a husband in another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful verse that explains this. In the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 18, text number 33 to 34. The position of the husband is nicely described. In that text, it is said that a husband is the supreme demigod for a woman. 6 Canto, chapter 18, text number 33-34. A husband is the supreme demigod for a woman. The supreme personality of God, Lord Vasudeva, the husband of the goddess of fortune, is situated in everyone's heart and is worshipped through various names and forms of the demigod by fruitive workers. Similarly, a husband represents the Lord as the object of worship for a woman. This is the primary duty of a woman, because according to the Vedic injunction, the husband, in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, Lord Krishna described so many entities, and he said, I'm this of that, I'm this of this. And so here, it is explained that a wife's duty is to dutifully assist the husband, because the husband primarily, in the purport of the text we are reading today, Srila Prabhupada explained in the purport that a husband, a family man, he has a responsibility to perform 5 kinds of sacrifices, which are called Pancha Yagya. This Pancha Yagna, in Bhakti Yoga process, Srila Rupa Goswami, he made it very, very, in our Pancharatrika Vidi process, Srila Rupa Goswami make them very simple for Kali Yuga man. That for one to be perfect in this age, one has to chant the holy name of the Lord. One has to worship the deities. And when you worship the deities, you have to offer boga to the Lord, because it's part of the deity worship. You have to go to the temple. You have to read the scriptures. And these 5 items is what devotees practice as Panchayagya. The Vedic ritualistic Panchayagya are very elaborate, but in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami how devotional service can be easily performed in this age. And the duty of the wife is to assist the husband in achieving these 5 items. And why should a wife accept that? Because in the 6th canto, as we have read, our primary duty, our function, the living entity, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Dehinos mi yata dehe kahumaram yauvanam jara tata diantara praptri diras tatruna muyati. The living entity is a spirit soul. So in essence, there is no woman, there is no man. When we go down to the basis, there is nothing like a man, or in the absolute sense of it. Every Jiva Atma is a spirit soul. And that spirit soul, in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, Krishna identified them as fragmental part and parcel of him. Mamaifam so Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. This Jiva Atma are my eternal fragmental part and parcel. But for a purpose of functional activities in the material creation, because the living entity have a desire, and the Lord in his arrangement has created the Ma'atatua for the ultimate purpose of fulfilling the living entity's engagement. Thank you. So the Lord says the soul are equal. They are all fragmental part and parcel of the Lord. But because the moment the living entity comes into contact with the 3 modes of material nature, he loses his focus, original understanding, and he identifies himself as a man, as a woman, as a French man, as an American man, as a Russian man, as a Nigerian man. These are secondary responsibilities of this living entity who is embodied. According to the Vedic injunction, Every manifestation has its primary purpose. So the concept of a female and a male are divinely arranged by the Supreme Personality of God for a purpose, to help, as Prabhupada enumerated in the last paragraph of the purport of the text today. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scripture for spiritual advancement. In other words, the nature of the material world is that no one can individually achieve anything, no matter what the gender the person is. And that we'll see when we analytically study the whole of human existence. There is nothing that can be achieved single-handedly. There is always the need. So earlier today, on a platform of a peace network, I was discussing Krishna consciousness perspective on what the academicians, they call as polycentric collaborative governance. There is a concept that is called polycentric collaborative governance, and how this relates to peace in Krishna consciousness. I was speaking about this topic this morning, and I was sharing that generally this concept that is called polycentric collaborative governance or system of governance is in Krishna consciousness accepted. Why? Because by Krishna's arrangement, the human existence is such made that there are so many manifestations, but they are all to be collaboratively working together for the ultimate purpose, as Prabhupada defined it in the purport, for spiritual advancement. The ultimate goal of human existence, in other words, is to ultimately go back to God, back to God. So we were discussing this morning that for one to be actually able to achieve human life purpose, one has to embrace Dharma. And what is Dharma? Dharma, according to Vedic consideration, understanding, is that a decentralized collaborative governance mirror of interconnectedness, of being able to please Vasudev, what in Vedic language is called Vasudev Kutumbakam. In the Vedic tradition, there's what is called Vasudev Kutumbakam. That is, the world is one family. This Vasudev Kutumbakam, or the world is one family, is a concept that is embraced in the Vedic concept. And therefore, the microscopic manifestation of that is in the duties between the husband and the wife. Because we cannot talk of a community without talking of a family. And the family begins with the combination of the harmonious engagement of a male and a female, which is called the husband and the wife. So in other words, when we go back to the etymology of the scientific spiritual basis of the body of a female and a male, ultimately, it is meant for only one purpose. And that purpose is for the ultimate spiritual advancement. And that is why Krishna gives the concept of what is called Vana and Ashram Dharma. And he confirmed that in the Bhagavad Gita, Shato Vanya Maya Sristam, Guna Kama Vibhagasha. The Vedic Vana and Ashram are created by me. And it is only for one purpose, for harmonious engagement of all different manifestations of a living entity in different forms for ultimate one purpose. And what is that purpose? For the ultimate spiritual advancement. And what is that spiritual advancement? Ultimately, the ultimate spiritual advancement is to come. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Bahunam Jamanam Ante Vasudev Savhamiti. That after many, many births of study of the scriptures, all the revealed scriptures of the world, when one carefully studied all of these revealed scriptures, one should come to the understanding that Vasudev Sarvamiti, that Krishna Vasudev is the Supreme Personality of God, That is the essence for spiritual engagement. Whether one starts from the preliminary stage of spiritual endeavor, which is jnana yoga or karma yoga, or one comes to the platform of bhakti yoga, whatever process of bhakti or yoga, which is the essence of human life, one should come to that point whereby Vasudeva becomes the essence. And that is what is called spirituality. Spirituality that is devoid of ultimately attaining the lotus feet of Bhagavan Vasudeva Krishna, then that is not spirituality. There are so many spiritualists in the world. And that is why Krishna says that out of many, many thousands of men in the Bhagavad Gita, Manushanam Sahasresu, Kasi Yatati Sidaye, Yatati Api Sidanam, Kasino Vam Beti, Tatwata. That out of many, many billions and trillions of souls who are endeavoring for perfection, only few of them may become perfected in the path of spiritual advancement. And one who advances in the path of spiritual advancement, that one person is what? Is one who comes to understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this verse that we're reading this afternoon, when we go back to listen, to see the conversation between Maitreya Muni. Maitreya Muni also in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the earlier chapter, and the later chapter of this same verse, Maitreya Muni is buttressing the same fact that is doing it. Maitreya Muni said in the third canto of the Srimad, this same third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 23rd chapter, verse number 1, in third canto, chapter 23, text number 1, Maitreya Muni is saying that after the departure of our parents, the chaste woman, Devauti, who could understand the desire of our husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband. Maitreya Muni is giving one who is a woman who knows her duty, and she's giving an exemplary personalities in the scriptures. She's giving two personalities here, Mother Devauti and Mother Bhavani. Those two characters in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explained that the specific example of Bhavani is very significant. Why? Because Bhavani means the wife of Bhava or Lord Shiva. Bhavani or Parvati, the daughter of the king of the Himalayas, selected Lord Shiva, who appears to be just like a beggar, as her husband, in spite of her being a princess. She undertook all kinds of tribulation to associate with Lord Shiva. When we go further in this story, we will see what kind of austerity she took. Because in modern day, husband marrying wife, wife marrying husband, the husband is looking for characteristics. She must be beautiful. It is very common in today's world. What is your spec? And it's not a shame. People are not so shameful when they come out and they say, what is your spec of a woman or a wife to be? Or what are your specs for a husband to be? And people will name all kinds of funny things. As Prabhupada mentioned in the purport of the verse today, so crazy things that they will mention about the requirement of a husband and a woman, or a wife or a husband. But these are not the requirement, because that's what the Prabhupada Maitreya Muni is giving the example of Bhavani and Devauti here, that they were not looking for external qualities. Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, and Devauti was daughter of a king, but she embraced the great sage Kassapa, who was a very austere sage. In that narration of that story, he was living in very what could be considered today a very strikingly poverty situation. That was not the consideration, because she understood the purpose behind the concept of marriage. Marriage is not meant for sense gratification. And Prabhupada mentioned in the purport of the text today, when marriage becomes a form of sense gratification, Srila Prabhupada explained in the purport, then Prabhupada said, when the wife is accepted as a sense gratification agent, personal beauty is the main consideration. And as soon as there is a break in personal sense gratification, there is destruction or divorce. And that is why in Vedic culture, there is no concept of divorce. Divorce is not prevalent. Until recently, in India, India was leading in the lowest rate of divorce. Up till about 10 years back, divorce rate in India was like 2%. But when you check today, the divorce rate in India today, you will see a staggering statistic. Because of what? Of embracing modern society. But when you consider it to other place, because of the prevalence of the Vedic scriptures, it is not still more than less than 6%. It is said that it is not more than 5.52% in the highest, which is in the Kazakhstan area of India. But all over the world, in the Western world, when you compare this with the same thing, when you consider this same divorce rate, divorce rate in other places like America, which is said to be the God's own country, unfortunately, the staggering rate of divorce cannot be overemphasized. Why? Because the focus on marriage is not spiritual advancement. And that is why we see that even in our ISKCON movement, our dear spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj, is so loved and so attractive to most of the mothers in ISKCON. Why? Because he was so particular about caring for the women in our Krishna consciousness movement. Because at a point in time, there is even a documentary written about ISKCON and its divorce rates. And if you want to, you can go on Google and search this. There was even a popular writer in the UK who wrote one time that if you want to see a society where divorce rate is the most high, you go to International Society for Krishna Consciousness Movement. And this tells a whole lot. How even in Krishna consciousness, our consideration of marriage, unfortunately, is far off from the scriptures that we study. Chandra Swami Maharaj was giving a lecture some few days back, and I was asking a question that what should one do? And Maharaj explained, what should one do in a situation where the husband or the wife is falling apart, even when there is an understanding from the beginning that the goal of marriage is spiritual advancement? And Maharaj said, well, this cannot be easily determined because it's a case-to-case basis. But the challenge to this is that although we have the highest principles of standards of marital life, even in Krishna consciousness, but ISKCON does not have a standardized settings for marriage consultations. In how many of our yatras do we have a marriage counseling department? Until recent, where some few temples started doing this. In our system, we don't have it, where ISKCON is no longer a baby organization. And if we have to reverse the negative narrative about ISKCON and marriage, one has to look deeply into this. Because the standard of marriage, when we look at the injunction of the scriptures and we put it to our day-to-day life, we see that there is a whole lot of gap. And that is the open call to each and every one of us. Every of our ISKCON centers, as a matter of priority, need a counseling department, a marriage counseling department. Because how do we, like I said in the beginning, Vasudev Kutumbakam, The world is a whole one family. And that is why even in material society, a society is determined by the microscopic nature of the family within that environment. And let us look at our ISKCON movement. What is the marriage rate, divorce rate? We've seen in our devotional experience that even sometimes, even in devotional service, sometimes you see male or female marries 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And this shouldn't happen. Because why should that be? Because the scriptures have given us all of the guidelines. And it's simply because of deviation from the ultimate purpose of married life. So married life is not meant for sense gratification. Prabhupada emphasized in the purport. Married life is meant for glorifying, ultimately, the Supreme Personality of God in spiritual development. And when marriage is taken to this level, the marriage becomes a celebration. There is a concept in material, a general saying that when a man marries, according to English word, there are 2 words that means almost the same thing: complete and finished. The word complete and finished are very similar in their meaning. But when a man marries a good wife, according to what matrimony is saying here, such a person is a complete whole, because such a marriage will lead to spiritual advancement. But when one marries the other type of a woman, then he is finished. So that is what Paul Apostle was saying in the Bible, that it is better for a man not to get married at all. But if he cannot hold on to celibate life, then he should marry. But his marriage should be for ultimate spiritual advancement. And this is established in all revealed scriptures. All revealed scriptures emphasize that married life is for ultimately is to glorify the Supreme Personality of God. Compared to India, when you look at countries like US, UK, in UK, 2025, as at 2024, sorry, married divorce rate is 30%. And some even say that is under-quoted. And what is the divorce rate in our ISKCON movement? Does anyone knows? Does anyone know the divorce rate in our ISKCON movement?
80%.
Eh?
80%. 80%.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Actually, it's quite an unfortunate thing. Divorce rate in ISKCON, according to statistics, although and most of our ISKCON centers, there are no better statistics, but it is said that according to authority from ISKCON News, ISKCON Desire Tree, which is our like standard news platform, there is over 50% rate of divorce in our movement. And this is absurd. Over 50%. And this shouldn't be. And when someone has knowledge, and that knowledge does not become an impetus for growth, then that is unfortunate. For an organization that is endowed with this depth of knowledge, And it is simply because of one reason. Because we don't have a marriage counseling system. Even though we have all of the knowledge, people still go into marriage, even within the ISKCON movement, with so much of ignorance. Some of us who are fortunate to get married in ISKCON 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and who are still having the same wife, the same marriage, can tell you what kind of a struggle it is. There are few exceptional, wonderful families in ISKCON. That is not to say that everyone is nonsense. But the challenge is that when we read scriptures like this, they are not meant for entertainment. They're not meant for erudite scholarship. They're not meant for just discussions. Because in studying the scriptures, according to Baptist History Standard, there are 3 aspects one should look at. And the most pronounced among them is practical application of the scriptures. Because that is the only way we can actually fulfill the desire of Srila Prabhupada. So when Srila Prabhupada was saying that if only one person becomes a dear devotee, he will be very satisfied, happy that someone has become a devotee. We can see what Prabhupada meant. We see that even the emergence of ISKCON, the world is going into a more and more degraded situation. And Krishna consciousness is supposed to, it is the solution to the degrading influence of Kali in the material world. But in our society, if we have a challenge, a situation, and this is not just related to the marital life alone. And one of our god brother here, Varacharya Prabhu, will always emphasize that ISKCON needs to go and study carefully Varna and Ashram Dharma. Because why? The reality is this, that we can influence our society. We can make the world Krishna conscious if we ourselves don't become Krishna conscious. And being Krishna consciousness is living our scriptures. Unless we live our scriptures, how can we say we are Krishna conscious? The famous story of the sage who was approached by a widow with his only one son who was eating sweet is very known by all of us. And the sage had to send the woman back and come back because the mother simply said, my son eat only sweet, too much of sweet. And the sage, powerful sage who is renowned and glorified by everyone, could not correct it, asked the mother to go and come back. And when the mother comes back, he told the child, stop eating sweets. And mother was looking very confused. If it is only for you, of course, the mother went with his son, and when he saw that the son actually stopped eating sweet, she became more bewildered and said, if this son could just stop eating sweet, just being saying, stop eating sweet by this age, why would he allow me? Because in those days, it's not like today, where there is car, aeroplane, and every easy movement. The woman had to come from a very far distance, travel so many days to get to this age. And it was she was becoming bewildered. If this man's position was just to tell my son, stop eating sweet, why did he allow me to suffer, go back and come back, knowing fully well that my distance to where he is a trekking for several days? I do not even have the money to buy a donkey to ride to his place. So why did the sage punish me like this? So she went back to the sage and said, my dear sage, if this was only what you have to say, why did you say it? And he said, of course, we all know the story, that as at the time you are telling me to help your son, I also was a victim of sweet addiction to sweet taking. And unless I stop that, I can't stop. I can't. So I had to also work on myself first. Then I can also help your son. So Krishna consciousness movement is not an intellectual organization for intellectual gymnastics of glorifying our intellectual capacity, knowledge. It is an institution, and that is why it is called the institutional Krishna consciousness movement, or the part of Bhakti Yoga, where lifestyle and the scriptures must align for us to be able to influence the society that we live in, and also to be able to make a difference in the world. I'll stop here and then give room for discussions and further contributions on this subject matter. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Yam ahu atmano hi ardam shreyas karmasya manini. Yes, yaham swa duram adyas ya. Pumams charati vidvara. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety and trusting all responsibilities to his wife. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. His Grace SALIKA Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
This is not just coming from you, but this series of verses in this particular chapter is not very appealing to lots of us, because when you are hit in the face with your own challenges, it's never pleasing at all. It's not pleasant. But we need to hear things like that. So, thank you for sharing. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, reflections, you may want to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Well, my first question, SALIKA Prabhu, is the text itself, that a wife is so unique, so special, that she is described as the better half of the husband. So if a man is not married, does that mean that the man has a full bad body or best full body, since the wife is the better half? So the remaining half of the man, of the husband, is that bad or the best?
Thank you very much for your question. I'm trying to understand, because these questions cannot be taken.
In other words, is the man bad without a wife, or is best without a wife, until he takes on a wife? Then the better side, or the better half of the man, as we read it, is the woman. Then what is the other remaining half of the man?
Thank you very much. I think I understand your question. In the material world, this material world is called a place of dualities. And it's almost impossible to exist in this environment without a companion. Nothing in the material world is complete without dualities. And that is why when you check everything in the material world, it's always dualistic, because this is the nature of this material world. So in the material world, Even when Krishna is manifesting himself in the material world, he comes as Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan. So in the material world, it is possible to remain complete by not marrying. But it's very difficult for the embodied soul. Because the nature of the material world is such that it's almost impossible. It's not that it's not possible, it's almost impossible for one to single-handedly achieve anything. So therefore, the Acharya explained that married life is better than celibate life in the material world. But for the purpose of spirituality, celibate life is easier. Please take the note of the adjectives I'm using. Better. It is better if one stays alone as a celibate. It's better to be married while in the material world, but it's
easier.
It is very, very faster. It is very less problematic. I'm trying to find the right adjective to qualify this, to be single. Why? Because when one does not get married, if one has the ability, if one could develop that required determination and inner strength not to get into marital life, it is better for one to remain celibate. But in the material world, it is very, very easy if one gets married. Why? Because that is the constitutional nature of the material environment. Because in the material world, everyone requires a support to be able to achieve anything. But for the purpose of spirituality, when the goal is spirituality, it is better to remain celibate. Because there is this saying that we have that I think it is quoted from Srila, is it Rupa Goswami or Sanatana Goswami, that if one is still having attraction for material desires and sense gratification, he should not go to that young boy who is at the bank of River Yamuna. So if for the purpose, if the goal is to attain spiritual advancement, if the ultimate purpose is for spiritual advancement, if one is devoid of all desire for sense gratification, which is very, very difficult in the material world, because the nature of the material world is such that it is programmed, it is made in such a way that sense gratification is the natural environment. So staying celibate in the material world is living opposite of the nature of material world. But if one, by virtue of good fortune, he can abstain from sex life and remain a nice brahmachari, it is better off. But for easy life in the material world, easy in the sense that when I say it is easy, someone will wonder, with all of the troubles that is associated with marital life, how can it be said to be easy? It is easy if one understands the purpose behind married life, because it is said that activities in the association of a like-minded person accelerate the growth of a practitioner. And that is why Srila Prabhupada in the 13th chapter, is it 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Yes, I think it's 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Let's go there. 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 8 to 12, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada emphasized 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, 13th chapter, text number 8 to 12. Yeah, let's go up. The purport. The purport. Prabhupada explained this. Thank you. Go slowly. Yeah, continue going. Yeah, it's going. Prabhupada is talking about non-violence here. Go up, go further, go further. Tolerance, yes, go further, go further. Yeah, let's go. We're almost there. Simplicity, go forward. Cleanliness, yes, go forward. Steadiness, go forward. Yes, go forward. We're getting there. Yeah. Slowly. Aha, that's where we're going. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for this. They are natural object of affection, as long as you are in this material world. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. That is where I'm taking the word easy from. So when I'm saying the marital life is very easy, this is the proper statement here. So it is very easy here. Easy. Marital life is very easy because it helps you to naturally, organically grow in Krishna consciousness. Because whatever you do in association, even bhakti in general, is said to be easy in the association of those who are like-minded devotees. So married life is easier if one understands the purpose behind marriage. But celibate life is better because it accelerates one's attaining the ultimate purpose, which is spiritual advancement. Married life will give you a longer rope, but if you focus in married life and you have a supporting wife, and that is what Maitreya Muni is saying, that a wife is so, that is what he meant when he's saying that a wife is helpful, that she's called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. When a woman, as we read in the 6th canto, accepts the husband as demigod, as the authority, and is submissively, like exemplary mothers like Bhavani, Devahuti, Savitri, and many other mothers in the Vedic system. And there are so many in the Western scriptures also, Deborah and many other of them. If wife becomes like this, if this is the ideal kind of a woman, then married life is very easy. I don't know whether that helps in a way to address your question.
Yeah, it helps a lot. Especially quoting Bhagavad Gita and Srila Prabhupada's purport, explaining why you are saying it's easy. But see, this is what I feel. And what I feel does not mean that that is the absolute truth. I'm just an insignificant, crazy individual sitting here. But to me, we live in this material world. And this material world is a world of relativity. It's not an absolute world. Therefore, for scriptures to tell us, if that is what scriptures say, I've heard many devotees say that there should not be divorce doesn't sit well with me, in the sense that if a man has a woman who is always cheating on him, who is always troubling him, stealing from him, doing so many, excuse my language, nasty things to him. And the woman is being talked to, and still the same. What do you do? If a man becomes abusive, thinking that the woman is, excuse me to say, an object for sense gratification, and abusing this woman, sometimes beating her up, doing all sorts of nasty things to this woman. And then we say, per our culture, they cannot be divorced. So you sit there and face the abuse. How do we explain this to those who are not devotees? That no matter what your wife does to you, no matter what your husband does to you, stay in the marriage. What do we tell them? What we say to those who are non-devotees?
Sadly, Prabhu, we never say one should stay in an ugly marriage, but there is a condition for divorce. Let's go back to the purport that we just read. When you go back to that purport, Prabhupada gave us explanations. And I will explain something that precedes that after reading Prabhupada's purport. So that notion that people say that there should not be divorce in married life is not correct.
Yeah, that's why I said I have not read, but I've heard so many devotees say it. And unfortunately, even those devotees who say it, they themselves sometimes are guilty of it.
Exactly. They can, that is not our philosophy. Prabhupada's philosophy is not saying like there's no marriage. And I will explain why the no marriage thing comes. I will explain that afterwards. If one can mold his life, that same purport, that detachment, that detachment we're reading, just after that detachment, then you will see. No, go up, go up, still down. Detachment. Go. Aha. Now go forward a little bit. Yes, it goes from. No. You have gone too far. That same paragraph is what we are reading. Okay, you are there. Okay, you have taken it away again. That detachment paragraph is where we have.
Yeah.
Reading. Yeah. Stop. Just go slowly. Go slowly down. After Hare Krishna, Prabhupada chanted. I want to start reading from but. Why Prabhupada said, go down. Now, okay, I'm starting from here now. But Prabhupada said, we can read the other ones later at our convenience. Prabhupada said, but if it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life. That's what I wanted to quote. Then let's go deeper a little bit into this. There are other purports we will refer to later. So Prabhupada is explaining here. So those who are saying that there should not be divorce in married life, it's not true. There should be divorce. When the marriage is no longer favorable, But the challenge here is that the foundational basis is that one should not even get into married life in the first place without actually becoming educated. That is what our scripture says. One should understand the purpose behind marriage. Because if one understands the purpose behind marriage, then divorce will never be a case. But there are extreme cases where when you know, and we have life experience of this, that before you enter into married life, the husband knows the purpose of married life. He knows the goal of life. And he explained this to the wife. We have had experience, practical experience of this. That the husband knows the purpose. And he explained it graphically to the wife to be that this is the purpose of married life. This is why I'm marrying you. It is for you to support and help me for the ultimate purpose of growing spiritual life. And when in such a cases, along the way, the wife deviated, or the husband deviated, then the wife or husband should divorce. But there must be a clear evidence of all of these circumstances. And what is said, when you divorce in that situation, no more marriage. But what we see is that because we will go into married life, our system, like we were saying, we've become so porous that we allow so many marriages without marriage counseling. We did not follow the Vedic standard of the mother-father being. When Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in early 90s, he started telling his disciples, he said, unless your mother and your father comes here and stand and approve of your engagement and marriage, I will not do the official Vedic wedding for you. That is what Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was doing. And that is when devotees started connecting back to their families. Because when devotees joined the movements, out of naivety, out of misunderstanding, miscommunication of the scriptures, misrepresentation of the scriptures, and that is worse than the not knowing the scripture, not having scripture at all. Because it is bad enough not to know the scriptures, but it is even worse when one knows the scriptures and misrepresent the scriptures. There are so many misrepresentations of the scriptures in the beginning days of Krishna consciousness yatras across the globe. And because of this misrepresentation, misapplication, and disinformation of the very standard of marriage, there were so many marriages that were constituted, there were so many ceremonial Vedic wedding that became a big embarrassment to the movement. And that is why the movement is having this high level of marriage divorce case, because the foundational thing was not done. And that is why we're emphasizing it, that it is not too late. It is better late than never, like they say. So now that we know, because most of us were young, we are naive, we came into the movement estatically, wanting to embrace Krishna consciousness without understanding. And that is why it is said that one should never teach. One should never become a guru or a teacher if he lacks the knowledge of Krishna. And when we say lacking the knowledge of Krishna, in the beginning, this Prabhupada started the movement because he wanted to start a worldwide organization. Prabhupada did so many things, but Prabhupada was qualified. Prabhupada could intervene, but so many of his first, second, third generation devotees, they imitated Srila Prabhupada because they did not know what Prabhupada knew. And they were trying to do what Prabhupada did. Yeah, Prabhupada could just marry a boy and a girl because they come into the temple. That was what we were doing. That was wrong. That was absolute abuse of Krishna consciousness movement teachings. And that is what has caused all of these married divorce cases that we're seeing. And that is why we need to correct this now. Because we come to, after so many years, we have read, we have understood that this is not what Krishna consciousness is. Unfortunately, those who are victims of this disinformation, misinformation, do not want to accept. They do not want to acknowledge. And it is said that half of a problem is solved when one acknowledges its mistakes. And when we acknowledge our mistakes, that we misinformed, young, naive devotees. We misdirected people's life by giving them wrong information about the process. Why should somebody want to get married under our temple presidentship or temple commandership, temple spiritual mastership, or whatever title that we give to ourselves, and we do not get them to understand when we ourselves does not know? It is said the prosperity of the world is lied in the hands of the woman. When a woman is abused, when a woman is in any way abused, made unhappy, the family will not prosper. Prosperity will not manifest. The moment a woman is abused in any way, when in a marriage, when a woman is not happy, that marriage is already going to crash. The family will suffer. Because a marriage becomes prosperous, it becomes a happy married life when the woman of the house is happy. It is not only because the woman must be chaste, the woman must be chaste, but the woman must be made very happy. When we see the stories of Devauti and the Devauti that was told, Kasipamuni, when he saw a chastity, a devotion, the scriptures tells us she gave her beyond, because the nature of the woman is that what? By the nature, because the constitution of that body is meant to enjoy. So the someone he gave, the Devauti Matidi, she gave her everything. So when a woman is unhappy, according to Manu Samhita, in any family, in any community, in any country, in any nation where the women are abused, are not happy, that community, that family, that nation will never prosper. And that is why we're suffering in ISKCON movement, because the mothers have been so abused to the extent that it is unbelievable that in an institution that is embedded with so much of knowledge, and women have to go through so much of sufferings. And so our spiritual master, Lebaki Tita Maharaj, he was so angry. In one time in Mayapur, he was speaking passionately, he was shedding tears because of the fate of women in ISKCON. So women have to be chaste, but then it is the duty, responsibility. We are less than men. There are so many less than man in ISKCON who claims to be men. And that is where the challenge is. And when the scripture says that the wife should see the husband, the wife is the demigod. One is not a demigod by name. One is a demigod by quality. When the husband is not qualified, then he's not qualified to have a good wife. So there are so many things wrong in our system that needs to be corrected. And that is why some of us, having come to this realization, are passionately advocating that this can still be changed. And like someone says, maybe this generation of leaders needs to leave the planet for us to change things. I don't know, maybe that is the solution. Because the fact is that unless we admit our mistakes, we can't set foot on the path of recovery of ourselves and helping others to be able to strive and help the world in becoming a better place. So it's a serious matter. This chapter is actually a serious matter.
Yes, it is a very serious matter because most of us are going through the problems the
Sure.
texts are describing. So we pray that we can do something better.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if anybody, Madhavan Prabhu, yes, please give me unmute.
Yes, Timothy Prabhu. Good.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
All grace, all glory, and just be not to Prabhupada. I don't know if, my network is coming and going, but I have some few points I would like to emphasize. I think in the ISKCON, our problem, the way I see it, is very simple, but where we have been making the mistake is area where somebody is just a brahmachari from there went straight to a marriage. Such a person can never be not yet prepared. If a brahmachari wants to get married, he has to first of all get a job. He must be self-sufficient before going to the matrimony. Then also, it's like our movement is still young, because the aspect of the afterlife, we have not yet fully understand it. But as spoken, as stated in the Srimad, especially the text we treated yesterday, it was said that the Grihastha, they are the people who are supposed to have a legitimate earning, and then they are the ones to finance the other aspect of the Vanash, the other ashrams, the brahmacharis, the vanaprastha, and also the science. So to be a grihastha, there must be qualification. Then also, what is responsible for divorce is this aspect. A man deserves respect from the wife. Like we stated that Psalm 3, 23 and 1, I think it was clearly stated that the husband represents the Lord as the object of worship for a woman. Once there is a respect from the woman, then definitely half of the problem is solved. Then another point I want to bring in is the horoscopic calculation. Before two people get married, they have to check on their horoscope if they are compatible. And this one I'm talking from a very practical point of view. If there is a problem in horoscopic calculation, the marriage, not even that one infidelity or something, but maybe I can just make a very simple analogy. Like those of us who are conversant with spirits, when you have two waveforms, if they are in phase, then their combination, there will be amplification of progress. But the moment the two waves, if they are out of phase, they will just nullify each other. Like character of two people, exact opposite, incompatibility. So these are the points I want us to look into, and that I believe is responsible for the failures we are talking about. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Madhavan Prabhuji, for those points. All the points you mentioned are very appropriate and direct to the point. And the only thing I will just add to that is that primarily, the first requirement, if somebody said, I want to get married, the first requirement is not money, job, house. Those are necessities that are required for married life. But the fundamental requirement is that one must be educated to know what married life means. Like Prabhupada said in the purport, the duty of a husband is that he must be able to engage in panchayagya, 5 sacrificial worship. That is the duty which leads to spiritual attainment. If husband understands this very well and why it is necessary, such a husband who knows the purpose behind marriage will be apt in his specs requirement for a wife. And when he does that, marriage challenges will be less. That does not guarantee, because I can share with you honorably that we had an opportunity by grace of the Lord. Before joining Krishna Consciousness Movement, well, I was still even a prophet in the church. I never wanted to get married. And that was why it's interesting. Just a personal experience. In 1986, there was a pressure. You need to get married. You are marriageable age. There was a lot of pressure. I didn't want to get married because I was looking at so many ugly parts of married life. I came from a very large polygamous family. So I didn't want to get married anyway. So therefore, when I was like forced, let me use the word, into getting, because society, normal material society is that once you get to a particular age and you're not getting married, you're not getting close to a woman, they start wondering, is he sick? Is he having some challenges? What are the challenges? So my parents, especially my mother, was very passionately pressurizing. So, and then I said, okay, fine. So when I got a proposed wife, I did my engagement, and I told the woman, I didn't want to get married because I want to bear children. I'm not getting married because I love you. I'm not getting married because what society considers to be marital purposes. I said, I know the goal of my life is to pursue spiritual life. And I need a person who will be a support to me in my spiritual life. So if you think that you will support me and be of assistance to me in my spiritual growth, of course, maybe then I didn't know the ultimate goal of spiritual life, but my understanding of spiritual life was at that time, I was expressing to the woman I married. She's still my wife today. That was about 4 years before I came to Krishna consciousness. So, and I told her, I said, but for 4 years, I'm not going to have this engagement of husband and wife, conjugal relationship with you, because I'm not actually intending to marry, but because it is necessary. Okay, we'll do all those marital things later, but give me 4 years. But this is my purpose. So I was very clear. And then when I eventually, a year to that 4 years to come to reality, that was in 1989, I took to Krishna consciousness. So I ran away. And I joined the temple. So I didn't want to go through with the marriage again. Because then, before that time, I didn't have a strong scriptural, references to stay celibate. Even though there are celibacy in Christianity. But there was no strong reason for me as a person that we used to convince my family. So when I read the Bhagavad Gita and I read the very scriptures, I took a very strong boat. I ran away. But then eventually I got married. But what I'm trying to explain is this, that sometimes, I don't want to go too deep into this story, but the point is that sometimes the husband may know the purpose or the wife may know the purpose why he wants to get into married life, has this knowledge. That does not mean that marriage problem will not come later. Marriage problems can come, but in that circumstances, one must have at least fulfill the righteousness, because according to the karma of the individual, and that was one of the things I was teaching today when I was talking about PCG. I mentioned in the class. There's a concept in the immaterial academic, what they call it, study of harmonious living. They call it PCG, polycentric collaborative governance. And I was speaking on that concept earlier today, and I was explaining that the fact that God's arrangement is that everything has to live harmoniously. If you look at everything in Krishna's creation, they are all connected to each other. And when one knows the purpose behind these connections, it becomes to navigate. So the fact that somebody might know does not excuse that person from the challenges that comes with marital life afterwards. But that person will be better situated than somebody who does not know. So therefore, according to karma, somebody may have that situation he has to go through even when he knows from the beginning. And then let's give an example of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was Mahabhagavat. He is a pure devotee, but he came to exemplify. Srila Prabhupada's life shouldn't have. His father, mother knew the purpose behind marriage. They live that life. But then, Prabhupada married life wasn't that kind of a celebrity. Prabhupada had to leave the house, but Prabhupada was living the house in knowledge. So the fact is that one must first and foremost at least have the basic required knowledge of what constitutes married life. So if due to karma, previous life activities, one has to be forced to go into married life, and marital challenges will come afterwards, such a person will be able to navigate. You see that the person lives the family life, and such a person will not remarry because he understands now, he knows this is unavoidable situation I found myself in, but now that I've gone through it, he goes into it, he goes out and never goes back into the situation again. And somebody else, even if he has to get remarried, but the circumstances will be driven by knowledge of the scriptures. There are several guidance. The scriptures are given so, and that's why Srila Prabhupada said that the only thing that we can do to appreciate him is to study his books, because everything has been given to us. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Salika Prabhu.
Thank you.
Anyone else with something to ask or to share before we bring this to a close? Hamsa Prabhu, please give me a mute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, your grace, please kindly accept my spiritual obeisances. All glory to Gurudev, all glory to Guru Srila Prabhupada, and all glory to the wonderful assembly devotees. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. It's very, very, very important in our life, because this marital is what brings our children to become God consciousness, and it's our generation. And I want to, one thing I also have realized is that the horoscope and everything will be there, but most of the time, lack of affection, because we become so religious that we don't give affection to the woman. And recently in Islamic community, a lot of divorces and cheating is going on, and most of the women, they complain about that they don't have affection in the marriage, because it happens to be like, if the woman asks for affection, they say that you are materialistic. And this also play a very big part in the marriage. If you don't give the woman affection and you become so religious, they will not be happy, and they will start looking elsewhere. So this is one of the things I've realized about what is going on most in the divorces in the marriage. Because if there's no affection, that leads to maltreating the woman, beating her or something. And the woman, they'll become so disrespectful because they don't have any affection in the marriage. And everything beginning to fall apart. Because if the woman is not happy, how can she support you in the spiritual life? And the man, if the woman beginning to disrespect you, the maltreatment become increase. It increase. Because in your mind, you think you are so religious that this is not religion or some affection. You don't have to give the woman affection. And this is also causing a lot of divorces in our society, especially what I've heard in Islamic community. But for ISKCON, I'm beginning to hear a lot of them today. So thank you for the wonderful class. This is my little contribution. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I'm Sarita Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing that. Actually, it is not synonymous to just the Muslim community or ISKCON community or Christian community. The reality is this, that sometimes, and the same problem is the cause. The cause of all of this is because of either lack of knowledge or half knowledge. When we all have experienced this, and that is why we are boldly talking, because we want to help the younger generations so that they don't go through what we went through. The reality is this, that lack of knowledge or half knowledge or distorted knowledge are all leading to destructions. Abhimanyu died in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, not because he was not knowledgeable about the phalanx that he has to build to, but he has incomplete knowledge, and it leads to his destruction. So half knowledge, no knowledge, or distorted knowledge are all dangerous to the growth of any existence. And that is why we are emphasizing this. So the reason why a man will beat a woman is because that person lacks knowledge. A knowledgeable man will not beat a woman because there will not be the reason for that. We've not seen in any of our scriptures that great sages, great devotees beat their woman. That does not mean that they do not punish their woman. A great knowledgeable person will not become too spiritual to the extent that it forgets to give affection to his wife. I was discussing about Devahuti. When you read the third canto, later part of, we'll still get there. When we read later part of this third canto, I was referencing 23rd chapter to you. And when you go further in this same canto, when you get to that part, you will see how Devahuti went so much and what the consideration, even though he was a great sage, because Pramuni was great sage, but he understood the need of a woman and he provided everything for her sense gratification. But because of half knowledge or no knowledge or distorted knowledge, most of us will become so spiritual that we forget the needs of the wife. So these are the responsibility. It is not that it is synonymous to anyone. Whatever knowledge is distorted or knowledge is incomplete or there is no knowledge, it will lead to the same result, this destruction. Every revealed scriptures, every tradition has the fundamental knowledge of how to guide. This is why it is called the Veda. And these are not subject matters that it is subjected to conditional life. It is the coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Punam, Om Punam, Ada Punam, Punam Punam Udasyate. The perfect knowledge is coming from the perfect person. So Krishna knows what will happen tomorrow from today. So therefore, he gives the knowledge of today and tomorrow today. So all of these things are there. If I read certain things to you in Mahabharata, I'm sorry, in Manu Samhita about the protection of women, you will never want to get married. Because to get married, the responsibility that is on the shoulder of a man, the Manu Samhita gives guidance. What is expected of a man who wants to get married? And one of them is what Madhavan Prabhu is talking about. How can you say you are going to get married because you have your genital raising, and then you said, and therefore I need to get married, and you don't have any means to provide? And Kasipamuni did that for Devahuti. He gave her everything. So when one does not have the qualification, it's just like one wants to buy a car And he said, because I desire to have a Lamborghini, he doesn't have the money, and he goes to Lamborghini car and he go and enter the car and wants to drive it away. He will be called a thief if he's not lucky to be lynched. And that is what we do. We get into married life because we don't have the constitutional standard knowledge that is required for getting into married life. Married life is a wonderful arrangement of the Lord for easy acceleration in spiritual development. But when one does not have the qualification to get into marital life or married life, and he gets into it, it becomes a destruction to himself and to the partner, whether it's a male or female. So both parties require the knowledge, and that very scriptures has given an outstanding, profound knowledge that is required for both male and female to get into marital life. And that is why what we're saying, that if we want to progress as an institution, as particularly to us as ISKCON, then we should create this marriage counseling. A community is not complete without this institutional setup, because people are naturally going to desire to get married, and people should be trained from childhood. It's not like when somebody has become 20 years old, 25 years old. In fact, children of today does not even get to 13 years before they start having a conjugal or sexual relationship with the opposite partner. So there is a foundational guidance, and that is why we mentioned about Vana and Ashram, because it's a principle that helps us. So half knowledge, no knowledge, or distorted knowledge is a gateway to destruction, and that we must avoid if we want to get it right. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Well, thank you so much. Today is Friday, the last day of the busy week. And it's an honor that we ended the week on this very all-important topic. So thank you so much, SALIKA Prabhu, for the, not just the depth of knowledge, but the concern you have on this particular thing is very, very important. We're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves. And we all, with one love, one heart, chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker for today, His Grace SALIKA Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us so Jai. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare
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 Rama,
Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare Hare.
Vancha kalpa tarvascha kripa simantha
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.